Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Sri Lanka is a dazzling gem in the Indian Ocean. It embraces and thrills anyone and everyone in its captivating sights. From beaches to mountain to forest to ruins, the beauty of Sri Lanka spreads far beyond just 9 arches, which is why the tourist industry is one of the steering wheels of country's economy. With that being said, I call upon the third oral presenter for the day to provide us with more elaboration on tourism in Allah, Sri Lanka, and the need for environmentally friendly approaches. And the presentation will play now.
You all a good day. I'm Sandhika Gunasinghe, representing the Provincial Office of Central Environmental Authority Sri Lanka. I'm going to share the research findings on tourism in Sri Lanka and need of environmentally friendly approaches. This study was conducted under the supervision of Professor S.K. Yatigammana and Dr. A.R. Gunawardhan. Before we move on, I would like to brief about this study. This study was conducted during the year 2016 to year 2018, right before the Easter attack and the pandemic situation. So this time period could be mentioned as one of the golden era for tourism industry in Sri Lanka. If I talk about Allah is one of the 15 divisional secretariat divisions in Badulla district in Sri Lanka, which is famous for its pristine environment. So the reason for the study. Past few years, we have observed that there's an increasing trend in tourism-related activities within an area, and we were concerned about the impact on environment and culture of the area. As you can see in these pictures, these are some examples. Some of the attractions were overly crowded, and the landscape is gradually filling with the constructional activities. So the objective of this study was to identify the major reason for popularity of Allah and to identify cultural and environmental impacts due to increasing trend in tourism in the area and to identify possibility of introducing ecotourism or sustainable tourism concepts to Allah as a way forward. So in the methodology, GPS survey was conducted with register review to identify tourist attractions within the area and to identify possible tourism related activities. Then the baseline data were collected through 3 different questionnaires, which were distributed among tourists, local community, and the industrialists. And the secondary data were collected through informal interviews with the government institutions, such as Central Environmental Authority, Provincial Ministry of Environment and Tourism, Medical Office of Health, and etc., who are directly or indirectly involved in the tourism-related activities. If I brief the participants of the questionnaire survey, 84 number of local and foreign tourists who participated for the questionnaire survey, and 57 families from the local community and 23 industrialists from industry sector who participated for the survey. Let's move on to the findings. Based on the GPS survey and field studies, we were able to adopt a map showing the Allah Divisional Secretariat Division with different distribution of tourism attractions. So these tourist attractions were divided into main 3 categories as environmentally important places, historically and archaeologically important places, and man-made attractions. According to the popularity, these attractions were color-coded, and in the pink color, it shows the most popular attractions. Apart from these attractions, some of the cultural aspects and events also could be promoted as tourism attractions, such as pottery industry in Kubalwala and annual events organized by different religious communities. So, recommended activities in Allah have been listed out. As you can see that most of the activities are related to the environment of the area, like hiking, trekking, nature trails, nature photography. Apart from that, there are some cultural aspects as well, like study on Buddhist philosophy, study on different cultures, and study on archaeological and historic arts. We were able to draft the tourist profile of the area. So this is important in future planning, predictions, and promotional activities. When we move on to the local community, only 11% of the local community informed that their primary source of income is tourism. And 52% of the local community mentioned that the current tourism trend is having a negative effect. And 86% of them said that there's a clear visibility in environmental changes within the area. When we move on to industrialists, 78% said that they have participated for ecotourism activities, and they have identified capital, knowledge, and lack of market as constraints when they are trying to convert their ventures to match with the ecotourism concept. When travelers were asked the question, what inspired them to visit the Ella, most of them said that they have come to experience the environment as well as for rest and relaxation. So it is evident that the focal attraction of Ella is its soothing environment. So we have to conserve the environment if we want to have a sustainable tourism industry within the area. Quality of the environment in the eye of tourists is so far good. However, they have highlighted that the improper waste management and visual pollution as the prominent environmental issues in the area. In conclusion, we can say that the current trend of tourism industry in Ella is toward development-oriented tourism industry or the mass tourism industry. Plus point of the tourism industry in Ella, obviously it is having sociological and economical benefits because of the generation of employment, increase in the income and living standards, and increase in the communication and language skills. However, we have identified some major drawbacks which are highlighted regarding the current tourism trend in Ella, such as unplanned urban development, visual pollution, improper waste handling, soil erosion, man-induced natural hazards, sociological issues such as increasing trend in occurrence of non-communicable diseases and sexually communicable diseases as alcoholism, as well as some child abuse cases, which was not well addressed at the time, and discomfort faced by the local tourists and residents due to price changes. So you can see there is a clear impact on the environment and the culture of the area. When we asked three stakeholders about the way forward of tourism in Ella, majority of the three stakeholders said that the conservation-oriented tourism industry is better than the development-oriented tourism industry. So in that case, I think ecotourism is one of the best concepts which could be practiced within the area. According to International Ecotourism Society, it is defined as responsible travel to natural and cultural areas that conserve the environment and sustain the well-being of the local people. So this is a wholesome concept which addresses the environment, local community, as well as the economy. So the benefit of ecotourism is it minimizes the negative impact for both environment and the culture, and it gives a better understanding of their culture and environment to the travelers as well as for the local community, which could be used for community-based approaches in conservation of the environment and the culture. So when I asked the question about ecotourism, if they know the word ecotourism, tourists and industrialists, most of them said that they know the word ecotourism. However, local communities said only 23% were aware about this term ecotourism. When I asked the question about the potential of promoting ecotourism, majority of the three stakeholders agreed or strongly agreed that there is a potential in promoting ecotourism in Ella. So it is a plus point. So Ella is having unique features on the environment and culture. So obviously Ella is having a good potential as an ecotourism destination. The constraints when we are facing when we are introducing ecotourism to the Ella would be the less awareness on concept of ecotourism as sustainable tourism and difficulty in changing traditional way of thinking or the attitude and absence of proper intervention in introducing ecotourism concept by responsible agencies and lack of proper zonal planning. So the way forward, actually, obviously, the tourism-related activities should be restructured using environmentally friendly approaches. In that case, we can use rules and regulation, and then the zonations could be used, and we can do some awareness to change the attitude of local community industries and the travelers. So we could enhance the community-based approaches. In this case, actually, government institutes as well as public institutes are having higher weight on their shoulders when identify the major drawbacks and the action plans which are practical and which could be applied for the area. So if we do these things, we could have a sustainable tourism industry within the LA area. And that is the end of my presentation. And I would like to thank Professor S.K. Jajigamana and Dr. A.R. Munawardana and all the participants in questionnaire survey and all public and private sector officials and all the others who helped me during this study, and SAEG organizing team for giving me this opportunity and this platform to share my findings, and for the prestigious panel for their input in this session. Thank you.
And with that, we are moving to the Q&A session.
Okay. As environmental officers working in the CEA, do you find any suggestions to be included into our National Environmental Act for this sustainable tourism industry?
Thank you for the question. I hope you can hear me.
Audible.
Sorry?
Okay, now we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Manoja, for your question. Actually, for the NEA, new regulations could be introduced through NEA for ecotourism aspects, because ecotourism is not much addressed in any kind of acts, I think, as of now. So for NEA, we can introduce new laws when it comes to regulating the impact to the environment and the culture, especially as NEA address the environment. We could address some laws on the impact which will cause by the tourism industry to the certain destinations. So considering that fact, we could introduce some laws for that. Like we can.
I have a couple of questions for you.
Yes.
Now you showed a slide giving various drawbacks of impacts, negative impacts in that area, including things like alcoholism and all.
Yes.
Is there a direct connection to tourism, or are there other reasons also for these drawbacks, for these negative impacts? And that is one question. My second question is, tourism in itself is an activity that has very negative consequences on the environment, and even ecotourism, particularly if there's too much of a load in a popular area. So have you looked at that aspect, that the tourism itself is also damaging to the environment and perhaps also to the, the social aspects? So those are my questions.
Okay, madam, thank you for the questions. First one is regarding the alcoholism. There's no any clear evidence to show that there's a direct impact because of the, alcoholism has increased due to solely because of tourism. However, I have interviewed the medical officer of health in the area. He said that he has worked there for several years and he has seen that increase in trend in alcoholism within the area, and he suspects that it is because of the tourism industry. Sometimes it may be correct, because most of the hotels are getting these bar license and all, so anyone can access alcohol very easily within the area. So it is also one thing. Another thing is that tourists give some kind of impression on younger generation on consuming alcohols and other things. So when our local community and especially the younger generation, when they see these things, they tend to go for these alcohols and the cigarettes, and they try to try out those things. So I think there's even an indirect cause because of this tourism, and alcoholism is having indirect aspects also, as well. And for regarding the negative impact of tourism to a certain destination, yes, we cannot have a zero impact tourism. It is very difficult to have zero impact tourism industry, because we are getting people from another area, and they would have an impact to the area. But in ecotourism concept, we are trying to minimize the impact both for environment and the culture. So I think compared to other tourism aspects, I'm not talking about the greenwashing concept. I'm saying that we have to practice the right and correct ecotourism concept when it comes to a destination.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You have identified especially a lot of reasons, especially for the especially which affects the environmental conservation. Out of those, waste dumping and especially the construction activities we have highlighted as the areas of major concern. So how to if tourism to be increased, lot of people need constructions. So how to sort out this issue? Because do you suggest to limit construct even the waste problem? We know that proper waste disposal methods can be adopted. By doing so, we can reduce the waste issue, or we can mitigate the waste issue. But the construction issue, how to address when the tourist influx is increased?
Okay, thank you, sir. Actually, yeah, that's a problem, because when the visitation is high, we have to provide accommodations. So in that case, we have to have constructions. But one thing is, they haven't done a proper study on visitation. Even I myself, I could not get a proper population. I mean, the visitation of number of visitors to the LA area. So first we have to do a proper study, and we have to tally that visitation with the available constructions or the accommodation facilities, and then we could see whether we want more constructions or no. Other thing is the zonal plan. LA is a very unique place. There are a lot of environmentally sensitive areas, so we have to have a proper zonal plan. There are UDA declared GN divisions, and also for that can be used for constructional activities. However, we have to separate the cultural and environmental sensitive areas. Then we can identify the zones where we could have the developments. And based on that, we could go for the developmental activities. And in the ecotourism concept, if you are applying that, we do not have to have a lot of heavy constructions to satisfy the ecotourist, because they are well aware about the destination, and they will be content with what they have. So if we are going to promote the ecotourism, we can have very light constructions, and as well as we can promote the local homestays and all. So they will be content with staying at the homestay and having the experience out there. I think I have answered your question.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll be ending the Q&A session. Next on the agenda is a timely topic to Sri Lanka. This invite is to our fourth oral presenter of the day, who will enlighten us with the forest conservation laws and their impact on rural livelihoods and environmental resilience, with pertinence to a case study of the Knuckles mountain range. And your video will be playing now.
I am Dinoshika Karunaratne from Department of Environmental Management, Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities, Rajarata University of Sri Lanka. My topic is forest conservation laws and their impact on rural livelihood and environmental resilience, a case study of Knuckles mountain range. Let me introduce my topic. Knuckles Forest Range is the heart of ecosystem in central highlands of Sri Lanka. It is rich in biodiversity and has a vital role as catchment to the major river of the Mahawali. It is one of the richest forest range in Sri Lanka as it home for highest number of indigenous endemic species of flora and fauna. According to IUCN, one unique feature of the Knuckles ecosystem is its richness in habitat diversity, which covers a wide range of habitats within a relatively small area. Accordingly, the environmental resilience is disturbed due to various human activities carried out by humans. The Knuckles Conservation Forest, which made human activity illegal within its boundaries, was the accumulation of decades of government concern for the forest lands of this rich natural environment. To protect the ecosystem, number of laws has been evolved in last few decades. This has been limited the utilization and extraction of forest resources, limiting the livelihoods of the community who lives around the mountain range. The next slide shows the research problem and the objective. Therefore, research problem is how the governing laws collide with rural livelihood in Knuckles mountain range and influence to environment resilience of the particular area. The aim of this study is to identify how forest conservation laws impacted on rural livelihood of the community and environment resilience. The slide shows you to the study area of the research. Let me discuss about the methodology. The research has been conducted within the Knuckles conservation area and the periphery of forest. Research sites are selected using socio-economic information. The methodology and tools were adapted to help achieve the aim and objective in a rational way. The population based on rural villages of Knuckles and the sampling method is the convenient sampling method. Also, the study based on qualitative data collected through and the Grama Niladhari officers, farmers, traditional healer, and leader of village societies. And secondary data sources collected through scholarly articles, journals, conference proceedings, and gazette notifications. Let's move to the next slide, which represent about the results and findings of the study. As I mentioned earlier, the peripheral households are largely depend on the forest for chena and cardamom cultivation, kithul products, and forest resources. Chena cultivation as the one of the main source of livelihood since last few decades. Cultivation without proper land management practices causes deforestation, soil erosion, loss of soil fertility, removal of undergrowth, which are invisibly damaged to Knuckles. Also, this affected to water aquifers, including catchment of Mahawali River Basin and influence to long-term changes in rainfall pattern and intensity. Loss of plant density due to inhibition of plant reproduction, invasive exotic plant proliferation, breeding of pets, breakdown of food networks, and changes in composition with adjacent forests disrupted environmental resilience to removal of the undergrowth for cardamom. With the objective of the sustainable management of the forest, the government declared the establishment laws and regulations for protecting mountain range. As a result, in 1985, Committee under Land and Land Development Ministry cancelled the permits for cardamom cultivation and declared land above 3,500 feet as sensitive area for strict protection, which began to collapse the rural livelihoods. Forest Department declared the establishment of Knuckles Conservation Zone to 2000 under the Forest Ordinance Act 1927 and confirmed it as environmental protection area. Confirmed it as an environmental protection area in 2007 under National Environment Act number 47 of 1980 had tightened the rules. Illegal logins, cardamom growing, shifting cultivation, and other activities were done with limited access to forests before 2000. But declaration of Knuckles Environmental Protection Area brought these activities to hold. Next, I move to the conclusion of the presentation. Conservation decisions are always made giving emphasis to long-standing conservation benefits, welfare and well-being of the whole society. But some of the immediate adverse effects, such as income losses due to conservation policies, have been borne by the rural communities living in adjoining villages of the forest. Forest range was conserved by the Department of Forest by keeping the community and set aside where there are many limitations. As a few suggestions of the suggestions to minimize these problems, participatory conservation strategies are essential for improve the accountable community in environment protection, and conservation approaches should include strategies to provide alternatives. Livelihood options can be specified. There are my references. And thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, we will be moving to the Q&A session.
Under the National Environment Act, the CA declares environment protection areas. As you have said that Knuckles, the CA has, the minister has declared the area, but the CA does not have the power to acquire lands. We only just declare the area. The ownership lies with the real owners. I saw in your presentation that you have said that acquired under the protection declaration, the CA has acquired the land. I understood as that, and also your suggestion is a good one, that you have said the livelihood of the people should be considered. The CA declares the areas, the relevant areas under some criteria. So if the criteria is only met with, the declaration is done. And also the CA considered mainly about the conservation and protection of the environment, but in some gazette notifications, we have considered the livelihoods And I don't know whether you have studied those gazette notifications, because in some gazette notifications we have allowed traditional fishing and all that. So I think your suggestion is a good one, and the CA can consider in future when declaration is done for the protection areas, we can consider your suggestion. Among your recommendations, the participatory conservation was one of the key recommendations. Can you elaborate a little bit on that aspect, and then tell us more about in what ways, what are the methods that, or what ways that you would propose that? You have to unmute yourself, please.
You are not audible.
Thank you. I'm suggested to support consultative workshops and supports strategies management plan for the landscape, and support process to formulate and approve policy framework for enable condition to manage the buffer zones and manage the knuckles landscape through a public-private partnership, and support conservation intervention to protect and restore sensitive ecosystem habitats and species, and prevent further degradation of the natural resources in the Crow area, especially in headwaters of the streams. And support sustainable agricultural practices that preserve and enhance agricultural biodiversity and productivity. Thank you.
Actually, this is a good paper, but anyway, I have a comment to improve the quality of the final paper that you write. Since it is about forest conservation laws and their impact on rural livelihood and so on. So I suggest to incorporate more legal provisions, because since you are discussing about the conservation laws, I would suggest that you discuss more about the legal provisions also in the paper.
Yes, I have a comment. I think your paper has raised an interesting issue of the way some of our environmental laws work. So basically the forest ordinance, even the FFPO, are these old colonial laws which take this command and control approach. So I agree with you that now I think throughout the world there's a new trend in law and policy that communities and stakeholders will also have to be included in conservation measures or for that to be a success. And they must also feel that they also have a stake in the environment. So I think you have successfully raised that issue. But also I see a few inconsistencies also, because you are saying before these measures were put in place, you are citing things like illegal logging, shifting cultivation, and other activities which were damaging to the environment also. So those also cannot be permitted. So I think what you could look at is how to strike a balance where communities have a stake in the forest and they have an incentive to conserve the forest because their livelihoods also depend on the forest. But at the same time, they should also not be permitted to take harmful actions. So I think you have a good paper, but I think you need to look at a few more points more carefully. But overall, your idea was good.
You are not audible.
Mute करा.
No, you are
Thank you,
still
ma'am.
not audible.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead. Okay. Thank you very much. With that Q&A session, neither success nor development is truly a win-win when it comes to with a hefty cost to the environment. Regardless of how promising some trends and avenues appear to be, they are only as good as their impact on the environment. I call upon our fifth and the final oral presenter for the day to further speak on the topic, cryptocurrency, a case of environmental ethics and regulatory governance. And your video will be playing now.
Namaskar and welcome to the esteemed jury members, organizers of the ICEG, my fellow colleagues, students, and the audience. I'm Dr. Abha Yadav, Associate Professor at the Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs, and this is under the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Government of India. I am extremely honored to be presenting this paper along with my co-authors, Ms. Ritima Singh and Mr. Hriday Kochar. The title of our paper is Cryptocurrency, a case of environmental ethics and regulatory governance. And I shall soon be sharing the screen with you. Yes. You see, like I said, our title is Cryptocurrency, and this is briefly about us as authors. The structure of the presentation is such that I shall be sharing with you a brief outline on the concept of cryptocurrency and its mining, the cryptocurrency vis-a-vis the environment, traditional currency and cryptocurrency on test of sustainable development, and thereafter the few recommendations that we as researchers shall be sharing with you. It's very important to understand, we feel, what is cryptocurrency and what is mining all about. Cryptocurrency is a digital currency in which transactions are verified and records are maintained by a decentralized system using cryptography rather than by a centralized authority. It uses peer-to-peer network called blockchain, which serves as a secure ledger of transactions, for example, buying, selling, and transferring. It is it's extreme volatility and promise of high returns that people are curious and they are drawn towards them. And this decentralized structure allows cryptocurrency to exist outside the control of governments and central authority. Now, what is mining? Cryptocurrency mining is the process in which transactions between users are verified and added to the blockchain public ledger. The process of mining is also responsible for introducing new coins into the existing circulating supply and is one of the key elements that allows cryptocurrency to work as a peer-to-peer decentralized network without the need of a third-party central authority. For mining, one has to solve complex mathematical equations. Once the crypto miner successfully completes the mathematical problem and cracks the code he verifies, the transaction information and adds the data to the public blockchain ledger. And in return for the service, the crypto miner can earn small amounts of cryptocurrency and also gets to add another block on the blockchain. It is pertinent to mention that the computer needed for mining has to have huge processing power. Bitcoin mining requires speed. The faster the rig, the more a person would be able to mine and resultantly increase their earnings. If the computer is slow, the person may lose out to other miners. A robust application of which is sector-specific integrated circuit, that is the application-specific integrated circuit, ASICs, or video card is essential for Bitcoin mining. This high computing power required by Bitcoin network initially involved the use of CPU and GPU from 2009 to 2011, and FPGA from 2011 to 2013, and later they reached the ASICs from 2013 onwards. Now, we would like to talk about cryptocurrency vis-a-vis the environment, where the environmental angle arises when in obtaining and using any cryptocurrency, these high-powered computers require immense amount of energy consumption for mining, storing, and transacting the cryptocurrency. The more successful a cryptocurrency gets, the more demand it has. And with more demand, the minting rises, leading to more energy consumption. Given the concerted efforts to reduce global greenhouse gas emissions under the Paris Agreement, the information and communications industry has received little attention as a significant contributor to the deterioration of environmental conditions. Under the Paris Agreement, which took place in December 2015, 196 countries approved a global plan to reduce climate change in the coming years, proposing to limit global warming to below 2 degrees Celsius. Lately, the concerns about energy consumption required for Bitcoin mining have begun to grow. Concerns about carbon dioxide and natural gas emissions due to the exploitation of Bitcoin cannot be overlooked. Recently, during the COP26 conference, Cointelegraph editor-in-chief Christina Corner spoke at the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Glasgow, Scotland, discussing interoperable relations between people and technology to the mining impact of Bitcoin. Ms. Christina Corner commented on the disparity between the traditional energy sector and the crypto community in implementing climate change initiatives. There are currently two tools that are used for estimating electricity consumption by the Bitcoin network. One is the Cambridge Bitcoin Electricity Consumption Index, that is the CBECI, developed recently by the University of Cambridge. And the second one is the Bitcoin Energy Consumption Index, BECI, realized by Digiconomist. On September 30th, 2019, according to these two indices, the network annually consumed between 73.1 and 78.3 terawatt hours of electricity. Some graphs are in front of you, and it should be borne in mind that estimates vary considerably depending on various factors, including hardware efficiency and electricity prices used in the process. Some studies conducted in 2018 showed a total electricity consumption of the grid that equal to that of some of the developed countries and areas such as Ireland, Hong Kong, and even Austria. The annual energy consumption was between 15.47 minimum and 50.24 maximum TWH. Such estimates have attracted the attention not only in the case of scientists, but also of international bodies such as the European Commission. The figures accompanying Bitcoin transactions are worrying, not only from the perspective of electricity consumption, but also from the perspective of greenhouse gas emissions. In the succeeding PPTs, we have reproduced some facts and figures that reflect on energy consumption on Bitcoin. Some of them are in front of you to take a look. There has been a study by Coco in their Coco et al., which emphasizes that the social and economic impact of cryptocurrencies is much smaller than that of traditional financial systems. Their study starts from the premise that periodically, in order to guarantee quality standards for banknotes, in circulation used banknotes are crushed so that to all operating costs specific to the banking system are added to the production costs of coins and banknotes, but also their destruction. Instead, the systems based on blockchain technology only need to connect to the network without having to bear additional costs such as those generated by ATMs, large number of employees, or waste produced, for example, by using paper and toner for printers. At the same time, a research conducted by the Cool Climate Network from the University of California, Berkeley, and cited by Coco et al., estimated the impact of the banking sector and showed that it is worth 383.1 million tons of carbon dioxide per year for bank branches and 3.2 million tons of carbon dioxide per year for ATMs. In addition, energy consumption is 2.3 billion GJ for bank branches and 18.9 billion GJ for beyond the technical issues that we'd be discussing. These are just some facts that are in front of you regarding cryptocurrency on the test of sustainable development, where we are discussing about Ethereum and examples of some green coins. And there are some issues, technical issues, which are beyond hardcore technicalities. There is also the issue of regulation that we would like to talk to you about from the perspective of the impact that the mining process has on the environment. We must keep in mind that there are currently several thousand cryptocurrencies whose mining processes require electricity. So studies have focused mainly on electricity consumption and carbon dioxide emissions in the case of Bitcoin. But we must not forget that in addition to this, there are other cryptocurrencies that are, although not as popular, but they do have an adverse impact on the environment. Currently, there is no clearly legislated and enacted legislation that specifically provides for regulation in this particular area. The size of carbon emissions combined with the risk of pollution and concerns about control over the monetary system could justify regulations. So one of the proposed solutions and recommendations that we are making for determining those involved to find new ways to pollute less, the environment could be to apply the polluter pay principle. Within the European Union, this principle is enshrined in Article 191(2) of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, while the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, that is the OECD, has long been a supporter of this principle. In the choices on the road to clean energy future, it is stated that economic performance can be achieved in accordance with the environment only when smart government regulation provides clarity, certainty, and well-applied rules. Thus, carbon credits should be used. Carbon emitters must measure their carbon emissions and purchase equivalent credits from emission reduction projects using smart contracts. NASDAQ was the first global stock exchange to examine the application of blockchain technologies to carbon trading. In addition, these carbon emitters also send money to finance global emission reduction projects, also using blockchain technology. In addition, the governments of the world's countries should encourage the use of environmentally friendly technology through various means, imposing fiscal measures to limit the energy consumption of the blockchain and thus its environmental implications. Lastly, Bitcoins can be transformed into something that meets the principles of sustainability, both from the perspectives of environmental implications and from an economic perspective. For instance, mining of coins can be done at a cooler place where energy consumption on deploying coolants for the computers can be saved. So with this, I think we have come to an end of a very brief presentation, and I will be very happy to take any and all observations or thoughts that the audience may have. I again, on behalf of myself and my co-authors, I'd like to extend my heartfelt thanks to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Now it's time for the Q&A session.
Hello, good afternoon, Abha. It's nice to see you and also listening to your presentation with very interesting facts and figures. I must confess that it's alarming as well. So you have actually pointed out that consumption of energy from the non-renewable energy sources and also increasing carbon footprint. Not only that, e-waste. So I think at present, these are some of the major environmental issues we are facing. But at the same time, I myself find that this is hugely popular in the current context of transactions. And there are many benefits that a general public would see using cryptocurrency. So then again, the question of striking the balance matter comes in. And have you studied any existing regulatory framework with this regard? So as a comment, I would suggest you to highlight some existing regulatory framework. I think in Europe, European Union, perhaps you can find some of the developed legal and regulatory framework with this regard. So I think that would give you some weight into your paper if you are doing any further studies in this regard. So that is just a comment, and all the very best and congratulations.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And I'd like to thank all the esteemed panelists for this opportunity to let us present. This is an area, ma'am, I feel that the environmentalists are slowly waking up to, because you absolutely rightly hit the nail on its head, ma'am, when you said that this is an alarming area and cryptocurrency popularity, like you said, is growing, ma'am. So I can take the context of India. It was banned in India by the Supreme Court. Now the ban is lifted. Just last week, our Prime Minister was in a very high-level committee meeting discussing with the governor of the Federal Bank, the RBI, the Reserve Bank of India, discussing the future trajectory of the cryptocurrencies in India. And across the world, ma'am, a lot of debate is going on. China has banned it, but we have jurisdictions such as Mauritius, the Bank of Mauritius, with which I have conducted my research, and many workshops we have held to understand their system, ma'am, where they are trying to build cryptocurrency as it is already legal in Mauritius, if we were to talk about one jurisdiction, and as an alternative. So the traditional currency system moves as it is, and along with that, they're trying to push cryptocurrency also. But I think platforms such as the ICEG 2021 is the right platform to also discuss the environmental hazards of cryptocurrency. And this paper will definitely be looking at, ma'am, the second part of your observation, which is the regulatory framework. And we'll definitely look at the European Union regulatory framework. Apart from that, the South Asian will be explored, ma'am, within this paper. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. With that will be the end of our oral presentations. Next, we move along with the poster presentations on today's agenda. The platform is now open to the first poster presentation. It shall be on the topic, Challenges in Implementing Market-Based on Instruments for Environmental Management in Sri Lanka.
First, we thank the Central Environmental Authority for organizing this international conference so that we could submit our paper on challenges in implementing market-based instrument for environmental management in Sri Lanka. There are market-based instruments, command and control instruments, community-based instruments, and suasive instruments are there for managing environment. Command and control instruments are criticized not very effective, saying that they are limited, effective, high cost of implementation. If you see the right side of our presentation, you can see these criticisms on the command and control, low economic efficiency, problems of sustainability, and associated social issues. But market-based instruments are appreciated. They support market, they don't impair the economic efficiency, and that is good for the society and the economy and as a whole for the nation. So in the late 90s, market-based instruments were introduced in Sri Lanka, and there was a very vibrant discourse at the same all those days, but we cannot see much of a success in Sri Lanka in applying these things for environment management. What are market-based instruments? To provide producers and consumers with incentives to change their behavior towards more efficient use of natural resources by reducing consumption and discouraging unfriendly production also. And it gives us more effective ways of making environmental progress. There are charges, levies, tradable permits, taxes, and subsidies are more popular. Environmental unfriendly, harmful things are taxed, and those taxes are used to subsidize for environmental friendly behavior for the win-win outcomes. But, what is the problem? Current situation in Sri Lanka is that we don't see that much of market-based instruments are in place in implementation. But we can go for payment for ecosystems, and it was mentioned in 2003 National Environmental Policy also, this polluter pays principle, but we didn't accept in Sri Lanka. But there are two programs, one from brown side and other from green side. Brown is the extended producer's responsibility to gain that for non-degradable solid waste management. Green side is the biodiversity credit accrual system, Forest Department, IUCN, Biodiversity, Business and Biodiversity Sri Lanka. But those are somewhat successful. But still, they are high time that we should have a very vibrant thing. But why? What happened? Main thing is that we don't have well-developed environmental markets in Sri Lanka. Second one is that our things are more centralized into the government, so it facilitated the flow for command and control. So people also expect everything should be done by the government. So the plowing back situation, what tax money should be plowed back into the system, but as a subsidy, but that is not that much effective. And lack of technical expertise, that is the big thing. We don't have good technical experts for this area. Those who are having, and the environmental valuation, we don't know what values incorporated. Most of the ecosystem services in Sri Lanka are not valued. And at the same, we don't know what is the effectiveness of this market-based instrument applied. And those things are there. So the conclusion is that the experiences regarding key challenges are there. Market-based instruments are not that popular, but we have to take lessons and learn everything from other regional countries and everything. We can try for scaling up these initiatives into national economy. After all, what my final message is that command and control, we have tried much. Those are not that effective. World is also trying to go for a more people-friendly thing, but we should answer those main things, and we should have a good technical experts and plowback mechanisms, decentralized thinking, should have well-developed markets, and after all, what is more important is to have a value base for ecosystem services in Sri Lanka. So thank you very much for allowing us to make a presentation. We should, thank you.
Thank you very much. Now it's time for the Q&A session.
You say the valuation of ecosystem services in Sri Lanka should be done. So what are the methods you can suggest incorporating ecosystem valuation into our different systems?
There are methods of valuation like direct market cost method and indirect market methods and all those things, reveal preference and stated preference methods, contingent valuation, choice modeling, travel cost method. Based on the environmental or ecosystem service that we are referring, there are different methods. But the issue is that in Sri Lanka, most of these, although the values, there are some valuation studies has been done for different resources, supposing and some of the water resources have been valued. But unfortunately, these values are most of the academic and technical exercises. Those are not being captured much into the present day policymaking and implementation. That is the issue. But I think we can, ecosystem services level, hardly anything. But I know that the Ministry of Environment having this natural capital accounting program. Now they were having some program for ecosystem services accounting. First extend accounts, then do some valuation and incorporate those values into system of national accounts.
Do you think the Sri Lanka should the Sri Lankan laws identify ecosystem valuation before implementing projects or development projects? And in
yes, really, because suppose infrastructure, the existing land use is been changed some human purposes. That means some ecosystem services values we cannot have as it is. So we have to have some compensation mechanism. Or suppose the BCIA process we have is extended benefit cost analysis tool was there, but I don't know is still there. But there are something that we have to have some method, because in project level or whatever, we should know what is the cost of the conversion of this natural ecosystem, what are the benefits. So we have to bring our decision making onto that line. And that thinking is so now been appreciated, and we are trying to have that in practice.
I just want to add some information to this. Now the government has approved, actually the National Environment Act is being amended in near future. Now this EPR system and this polluter pays principle, we have introduced it to our proposed amendment. So the load-based licensing fee scheme, that is charging according to the discharge base load, we can charge for the waste volume. So now the government has supported, and now we are in the process of including the new provisions, the proposals to the National Environmental Act.
Yes, that is great, but I think this polluter pays principle has some of the drawbacks there if not monitored, and if the collected money is not plowed back into the improvement of the environmental performance, or downstream compensation for the clear water like that, that won't be that effective. So we have to have a good monitoring system for this polluter principle, and at this same time we have to go for payment for system services systems also. That will be more appropriate, because in payment for ecosystem services, provider receive user pays, and so there are incentives for green industries, sustainable livelihoods, and some environmental service providers to improve their performance. And so it will be more advisable. Yeah, good command and control. From command and control to, if we can have some those elements to National Environment Act, polluters, that's a good move. Yes, we appreciate it very much. Thank you.
The success stories of payment for ecosystem services from any other states?
Any other countries?
Any other countries? Yeah.
In success pay for ecosystem service from any other countries. In Indonesia and Japan, they have that is a different policy instruments really. These are SUE instruments. So there are payment for ecosystems have different scenarios. It can be one-to-one, many-to-many, many-to-one, or many-to-many. So in Prakash River Basin in Indonesia, they have improved the environmental performance of the high polluting industries, giving some boycotting of this and all. Then government insisted them to improve their environmental performance to assure downstream water quality. That and payment for ecosystem services, actually that is a reward for ecosystem services in Japan, because the old people in Kagoshima prefecture, they bring those things into one place. So they have been rewarded. So there are some success stories are there.
But in Western countries, I think there may be lot, but I have to go. I didn't prepare to answer that question. But that has more applicability for a country like Sri Lanka, I think. So we have to think on those lines.
Thank you very much. With that, we will move into the second poster presentation. Sri Lanka is a country with a rich history and stretches back for centuries. Next in line is a poster presentation on an evolution of ancient inscriptions as historical evidence for conserving the environment in Sri Lanka.
Good day to everyone. Here Manori Pereira from Rajarata University. It's my great honor to present my research findings at the International Conference on Environmental Governance 2021, organized by the Central Environmental Authority. Thank you very much for the great opportunity. My research topic is an evaluation of the ancient inscriptions as historical evidences for conserving environment in Sri Lanka. This poster presentation consists with abstract, introduction, objective of the study, methodology, results and discussion, conclusions, recommendation and references. Moving to the introduction part, we know that there is a clean relationship between man and the environment. These two words, man and environment, are not new in human history, and the interaction between them is well established. Virtually all the countries of the world have rich ancient evidence to show how people lived harmony with nature. This has always been reflected in a variety of traditional practices, religious beliefs, rituals, inscriptions, as well as in the daily lives of people in ancient times. Sri Lanka, with its rich culture in ancient civilization, has provided substantial evidence for the application of environmental conservation concepts and theories. With that background, the main objective of this study was to evaluate the ancient inscriptions as historical evidences for conserving the environment in Sri Lanka. Therefore, this is a kind of study which will help us to protect our mother nature while learning from our past. Let me shortly tell you all about the methodology of this study. Actually, this study was mainly carried out according to the secondary data while considering Anuradhapura Kingdom as the study period. Mainly literary and epigraphic sources were used to find out the relevant data such as Mahavansha, Jataka stories, and so on. Further, stone inscriptions like rock, pillar, slab inscriptions, and some other epigraphic sources were used for the purpose of this study. Okay, now I would like to move on to the results and discussion part. According to the findings of this study, in Anuradhapura Kingdom, the environmental policy had been influenced by the factors such as the monarch being a Buddhist and Sri Lanka being a Buddhist country. Accordingly, the policies of the monarch had been influenced by Buddhist philosophical ideas. This was confirmed by Buripanna Jataka story, Kutadanta Sutra, Anuradhapura, Pulyankulaba, Jetavana slab inscriptions, Ravana inscription, Munasinghagama inscription, Atkanda inscription, and some other archaeological findings of the Anuradhapura period. For examples, Anuradhapura slab inscription of King Kashyapa, the fifth mention of maintenance of environmental policy. Jetavana slab inscription by Mahinda IV show another instance of environmental protection policy. Further, first rock inscription, second pillar inscription, Bilotra inscription, and Vevalkati inscription were provide ample evidences of the attempts made by the monarch to safeguard the lives of not only human beings but also animals. Furthermore, Anuradhapura era provide evidences of providing mercy to the humans and animals alike. Here I have mentioned few. For instance, Mahavansha proves how Pandukabe shows mercy on his eldest uncle Apaya and another uncle called Girikanda Shiva, even though he slayed all his other uncles and founder of the city of Anuradhapura. Another instance of sparing life can be seen in the instance where King Dutugamunu sparing life of his brother Tissa as a result of the meditation of the Sangha. In addition, Anuradhapura era provides evidence for conserving water. As an example, the water should be conserved to cultivate the nearby paddy field and also not to disadvantage the monks. As conclusions, physical environment is one of the blessings of humankind. Human life and the cultural behaviors are protected by nature in manifestous manner. Therefore, we are duty bound to protect in return. This study shows how the rulers of yesteryear have placed different policies to conserve environment, including water, land, forest, wildlife, etc. So finally, as a recommendation, I want to say that conserving environment is more sustainable when a governmental organization involves in protecting environmental policy rather than the meditation of a single private individual. Here I have mentioned few references which were used to conduct this study. So finally, I would like to conclude my presentation while thanking you all. If you have any query regarding this, kindly let me know. I will share all other findings of this study. So thank you all and have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, we will start the Q&A session.
At the end of your abstract, you have come to one conclusion, namely that environmental conservation is more effective when the state is involved. Are there any other conclusions, other lessons we can draw from the past to maybe even include in laws, how our ancestors, the measures they took for environmental conservation or sustainable development?
Sorry, madam. I can't hear.
Shall I repeat it?
Yes, madam.
Okay. I see that you have come to one conclusion, that environmental conservation is more effective when the state is involved. So my question is, are there any other lessons that we can learn from what our ancestors did than the measures they took to conserve the environment, other than this one?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Actually, there are many lessons that we can learn from our past, not only for humans but also animals. Rulers in yesteryear, they maintained well-planned environmental policy to protect our mother nature and to develop our society. I think it may be a good example to protect our mother nature while we are on the way to a sustainable development.
I quite agree with Professor Kamina that I think I would suggest you to refer more literature in the ancient historical sources to find out not only based on the governance based on the public trust doctrine or other concepts that government only involves, but also community responsibilities and also grassroots level conservation was pretty much visible during this time. And not only that, from top level to the governance to the very bottom level, across the governance, also there are various methods that the ancient conservation policies integrated environmental conservation and balance it with development strategies. So I think there are many examples to show that intergenerational equity and also intragenerational equity and sustainable development concept that many ancient practices, not particularly in the development process only, but also certain rituals and other customary aspects as well, where the community involvement is visible. So perhaps you can read literature on Sri Lankan history and ancient approach to environmental sustainability more. And I myself is very much interested in this area, and I have just published an article in the Commonwealth Universities Review on the same thing. And I know that personally there's much literature, written literature. And if you look at Hungary versus Slovakia and Judge Veeramantri's judgment, you will find some of those literature. And there are many literature available in the written history of Sri Lanka. So that is something for further research. Thank you very much for doing this kind of interesting areas of research.
And
Thank you
I also have a comment. Actually, this is a very interesting area. Even when you explore the traditions and the historical environmental conservations and the evidence related to that, we see in addition, actually the environmental conservation was very closely connected with the respect for the environment, especially the respect of the previous rulers. So I think better if you had taken steps to include comments on environmental respects also, that would be very meaningful.
Thank you very much, sir and madam, and all the panelists. I totally agree with you all because in past, man and the environment, the interaction between them is well established and they respect each other. Uh, I totally agree with you on that.
Thank you very much. That will be the end of the Q&A session. To navigate through a pandemic and still achieve the best of economic development whilst adhering to sustainable development goals is no easy feat. Our last and final poster presentation for today's event is an abstract on major themes in corporate sustainability reporting, a qualitative analysis using Sri Lankan listed firms.
I'm R.N.K. Salsa from the Faculty of Applied Sciences by Ministry of Sri Lanka, and I will be presenting our research on major themes of corporate sustainability reporting, qualitative analysis using Sri Lankan listed firms. The co-authors of this research are Dr. Asanka Kalagidara, Dr. A.S. Kumara, D.N. Jason, and M.K. Samanana. Giving a brief introduction on our research, businesses have an important role in driving and investing in innovation to meet the requirements of sustainable development, and in reporting to decision makers about how they contribute to global agenda on sustainability. Corporate sustainability reporting is an emerging discipline, but it is not having a universally agreed definition currently. But this can be defined as a process that assists companies in setting goals, measuring performance, and managing change towards a sustainable global economy. It is one that combines long-term profitability with social responsibility and environmental responsibility. The private sector plays a major role in achieving the sustainable development goals, and similar to many countries, sustainability reporting in Sri Lanka is voluntary and not mandatory. The reporting content of Sri Lankan firms as well as many nations' firms may vary with relevance of the reporting guidelines with reporting firms' operating context and individual firm preferences. So the research objective was to explore the frequently reported themes in sustainability disclosures in Sri Lankan firms. For this, we have used 25 annual reports, which are listed in the Colombo Stock Exchange as in the year 2019. And these were selected on the basis of top market capitalized companies listed in the CSE. These companies included different industry sectors, such as diversified holdings, banking industry firms, and manufacturing industry firms. A qualitative research technique as the thematic content analysis was used to identify the major themes reported in the sustainability reports of Sri Lankan firms. SDGs were used as the basis in this analysis. The results shows that 48 reporting categories or 48 frequently reporting information is identified in the sustainability reports of Sri Lankan firms. These 48 reporting categories were clustered into 17 themes based on the social sustainability, economic sustainability, and environmental sustainability context. The right side graph shows how the reference percentage has been distributed among these 17 reported teams. As you can see, the blue color line denotes the economic sustainability information, whereas the green color line and orange color lines denotes the environmental sustainability information and social sustainability information. In the graph, the blue color line is having the most reference percentage, which is the information regarding improving the economic value generated within the company and community. This information is followed by social performance information, such as satisfying educational needs of class and community, investing to meet the community and employee health needs. The least frequently reported themes at the bottom of the graph is denoting the information regarding sustainable practices in managing the water resources and beaches. And this information is followed by information regarding international law strategic partnerships on sustainable development and performance on sustainable production and distribution processes. As you can see in the graph, the most reported content is on economic sustainability indicator, and the least reported content is on an environmental sustainability performance indicator. In conclusion, sustainable economic performance of the firms is a major reporting factor in Sri Lankan firms, followed by social performance factors. Environmental performance factors are least reported in sustainable reports on Sri Lankan firms, considering these 17 SDGs. And the results pave the way in extending for broader knowledge on the context of developing country perspective on the theory of sustainable reporting practices and reporting countries. As Sri Lanka has pledged to achieve the SDGs by 2030, and it can be suggested for the industry policymakers to make use of these results to apply the SDGs as a reporting framework or in setting minimum reporting guidelines to monitor the performance of industries and private sector firms towards achievement of these SDGs. I would like to greatly acknowledge the AHEAD DOR grant, the Development Oriented Research Grant, for providing us financial support in conducting our research. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now it's time for the Q&A session.
I have a question. Thank you for your presentation. That was very interesting. My question is, now a lot of our companies are taking positive steps to go green, particularly if you take the garment industry, because they are also under pressure from their foreign buyers. So if they are taking these measures, particularly sustainable energy and so on, why are they not reporting on it? That's one question. The second question is, what can the shareholders do? What is the role of the shareholders?
For the first question, ma'am, the apparel sector industries, most of the apparel sector industries are not listed in the Colombo Stock Exchange. As a regulatory firm in the Colombo Stock Exchange, there is a requirement that sustainability reports must be reported. But it is not mandatory as for all the companies in Sri Lanka. My suggestion is that the industry policymakers should make some attempt to include these, at least some of these, a minimum standard for the sustainability reporting in these firms too, as in the apparel sector. And for the second question, I think I'm sorry, ma'am, can you repeat the question again?
Is there a role for the shareholders?
Yes, the role for the shareholders is no, because the shareholders can, especially for the investors, they can request these firm managers and the top management to report on the sustainability performance of their firms to increase their maximize their wealth. So there is a special role for these shareholders. So they can ask this the managers of the firm to report on sustainability to increase their performance and gain more wealth and be successful in the industry.
Is there any way to assess the credibility of their reporting?
To assess the credibility, I am researching on that more on the topic, but some sort of information regarding the sustainable performance, at least a quantifiable terms could be included in the sustainable reports to increase the credibility. And that is a suggestion, sir.
Thank you very much. That will be the end of the Q&A session. With that, we have finished all the oral presentations and poster presentations for today's event. Time has flown by and we have finally arrived the last and the final session of today's event. And simple gestures of gratitude and appreciation definitely goes a long way. Before we wind up today's session, let's go ahead with the awarding of special tokens. invite Mrs. Shamini Peruma, the Director of Environmental Promotion, to award these special tokens to our well-known panelists. First of all, I would like to invite Professor A. Sarveswaran to collect his special token. Next on, I would like to invite Professor Kamena Gunaratna to collect her token. Next on, I would like to invite Dr. Kokila Konasinghe to collect her token. Next one, I would like to invite Mr. Ravindranath Dabare to collect his token. Put your hands together for the fifth panelist for today, Mrs. Manjula Vimalasena. Sorry, Mrs. Manuja Vimalasena. Thank you very much, Mrs. Shamini Peruma. After an amazing session covering the area of environmental policy governance and regulatory reforms, now it's time to wrap up the session, wrap up the first day of ICEG 2021. A special thanks goes to our well-known, amazing panel, and I would like to thank all of you who joined with us today's event, and we welcome you all to join with us tomorrow as well. It is going to be the second and the final day of ICEG 2021. And we welcome you all to enjoy the little treat we have organized for you after the session. Stay safe and have a good night.